Hello and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for July 22nd, 2019. I'm Scott and I'm sponsored to work on CircuitPython full-time by Adafruit, so check them out at adafruit.com for all your hobby electronics and educational electronics needs. This is a meeting we have every week on Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Everybody is welcome to join. It's run on the Adafruit Discord server, which you can join at the URL adafru.it/discord. As I said, everyone can join. We're happy to hear what people are working on. This is our time in the week to sync up as a community and talk about all things that are happening with CircuitPython. The meeting is recorded, so beware that we are recording both the CircuitPython text channel and the voices that are in the CircuitPython voice channel as well. It gets posted on the Adafruit YouTube, which is youtube.com/Adafruit, and Diode Zone occasionally. If you want the recordings emailed to you, you can join the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter at adafruitdaily.com. The links are in there. Just search for weekly meeting. And then we also push the audio parts of these meetings out to podcast services. So if you want to subscribe and get it auto downloaded, that's a great way to do it as well. This meeting is run in 5 parts. After the intro, we'll do community news, which is a general overview of some of the news that's happening within CircuitPython land. After community news, we do State of CircuitPython, which is a statistics view of the state of CircuitPython, so both the core and the libraries. And I just realized I need to snag that as well, so I will do that in just a bit. After that, we have Hug Reports, which is done as a round robin. So when we do a round robin, the goal is to give everybody a chance to talk about what they're working on or whatever the topic is. Hug Reports is a chance for folks to say thank you to other folks for the work they've been doing within the CircuitPython world. And then, so with a round robin, if you're lurking and you just want us to skip over you, you just say, hey, I'm lurking. If you don't have a microphone or can't speak where you're at, you can always tell us, hey, I'm text only. If you can't make the meeting, you can still put your notes in the notes doc, and then we'll read it off when you're, even though you're not here. And then lastly, full participation would be just hopping on a mic and telling us what you're up to. That's how round robin works, and Hug Reports are all about saying thank you. After Hug Reports, we do status updates, which is a minute or two about what you've been working on and what you plan on working on in the coming week. It's a great way to get synchronized on what everybody's working on and give tips and tricks about things as well. And then lastly, we have an In the Weeds section, which is any longer topics that have come up or people want to talk about. In the Weeds section is where we can talk about those things. And I think that's it for the intro. So let's go to Phil for community news.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right. First up, this weekend coming up is Pi Ohio. So if there is a live stream of Kattni's keynote or photos or whatever, or hashtags, watch our Twitters and give a shout out to Kattni. She's not here in this meeting right now. She's away, and then she's also preparing for her keynote. So I put that in the chat. Looking forward to that this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, well, speed is not our focus with CircuitPython. It's really great when someone gives you a 10 out of 10 for speed. So we'll take it. Ease of use is what we're all about. That being said, we did make some significant update to CircuitPython. There's tons of Hug Reports that everyone will go over later, but just shout out to everyone on the team who made these speed increases. So Hackspace Magazine had a couple articles, and one of them they did some testing. We saw this testing script that they used on Pastebin, and I just ran it, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat. And then later on, I said, hey, was this what you used? And they're like, yeah. So that's going to go out in the newsletter today, and there's also a blog post if you're interested in it. But a lot of the things with displays in particular are super fast. I was using my fake HyperCard this weekend, and it's nearly instantaneous. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, like my own. If y'all are familiar with like Twine, the interactive storyteller, or the Choose Your Own Adventure book series, which we have nothing to do with that, we call ours Python Your Own Adventure. You can make really neat interactive fiction pieces with some of our projects, and we have that on the Learn system. Scott and Kattni were on the Embedded FM podcast, and this is all about Circuit Python and more. So tune into that. The name of it is In the Key of Lime. I believe that's from Kattni's first project she worked on
Mm-hmm.
with. And then for Circuit Python Day, which is coming up pretty soon, there is the event in NYC. There is the event in India, and they just released a poster, which I thought was pretty cool. And then on the day of, we'll have a lot of interesting things on our website. So lots of surprises. If you like CircuitPython on lots of different types of hardware, tune into adafruit.com on 8/8/2019. Um, there's another podcast, empowering developers with embedded Python. I believe Scott's on that. Also Nina.
That's just Nina.
Just Nina. Okay. I
Yep.
think there was a link or something like that, but I know for sure it was Nina. And then this is what I'm super excited about. This is how to add a new board to CircuitPython. So a lot of times we reach out to people. We're like, oh, that's a cool board. Here's how to add it to circuitpython.org/downloads. You get more people using the board. And now we have a guide on how to do it. So now when we reach out to folks, or if they're asking us, sometimes they're like, hey, I want to do this. How do I do it? We have a guide for that. And the latest one that we're probably going to, I talked to them over the weekend, is there's a board. It's super cool. It looks like a crab. It's this it's this really neat
Mm-hmm.
word, I'm, even though it's not called Krabby Krabby, I'm gonna call it Krabby Krabby, because it's like Makey Makey, and so that'll be neat to see that in there. And then last up, if you're interested in someone who's been doing a lot of great work in community and events and bringing people together, Scott Hasselman stopped by Adafruit on Saturday. He had his nephew Alan, who's going to be an EE soon, and then we talked about community and his long career that he's had at Microsoft. And then I'd say the most important or the most interesting thing that I've not seen a video or a lot about this is how he actually made the artificial pancreases. He's very open about he has diabetes. He's like, here's what I have to deal with. Here's what I have to do. And he's a programmer and engineer, so he really did a neat job with making something that works for him. So just watch this really neat assistive technology and medical technology that he's using. And so we really dive in, and he showed all the different components and pieces. So that is a community news.
Sweet. Thanks, Phil. And that last
Yeah.
video with Scott is definitely on my to watch list today as well.
Yeah, and I think you, Scott, you also talked to Scott Hanselman. So there's an upcoming Hansel Minutes, right, with you?
Yeah, I thought it would be last week, but it may actually be next week.
He said one of my questions to him was, how do you not give up doing a ton of podcasts and stuff? Because he has 700 and we have probably around the same.
Right.
And he's like, well, lately, because it's like it's a question. Like I don't get a chance to talk to people who publish, this much. And he said, well, lately I make sure I have like 3 or 4 ready to go. So it's yours is done. I think he just
Right.
gives him a cushion because he's
Yep.
in New York right now. So good strategy.
Yep. Yeah, and that's how the PyDev of the week worked too. Like I did the email interview thing like
Yeah.
4 weeks or more before it actually got posted on the site, which was quite nice.
Yeah, we can't do ask an engineer ahead of time because it's like this is what happened the last 20 minutes.
Cool.
All right. Well,
Thanks,
thanks
Phil.
everybody. Yep.
All right, and with that, let's move on to the state of CircuitPython and the libraries. This is again we have a script called Adabot that gathers some statistics about what's happened with the project. I just pulled these off our S3, and they are actually as of yesterday midday. So if anything happened in the last 24 or 22 hours, they won't be accounted here. But besides that, it'll give us an idea of where we're at. So overall, in as of yesterday, over the last week, we had 31 pull requests merged, which is quite epic. We have that pretty standard. We had 12 different authors. Some new folks are Roman Kozak, Nano Dano and Frogger with a PH are all new folks there. So thank you to all those different authors. We really appreciate all the contributions. We had 6 reviewers, pretty more active folks who are doing the reviewing. So again, if you want to get started with CircuitPython, reviewing is actually a great way to do it. find a device that you have, and if somebody has a change to it, you can just download it and test it and let us know that it's still working. That's super, super helpful. We had 7 closed issues by 4 people and 4 opened by 4 people. So we're again net down a few issues, which is awesome. And overall, we're on our second release candidate for 4.1. 4.1 should go live shortly. It's the thing that's provided all the speed ups. So saw the article from Hackspace and was like, oh, I suppose we should actually release that, which is a bit funny. And then, so once 4.1 goes stable, expect to see a pre-release of 5x soon after that. 5x has all of Dan's new BLE work, which is very exciting. And we'll have a few enhancements to display I/O as well. So, yeah, 5.0 won't be a big milestone, kind of like 3x and 4x, where it will be more iterative, but it does give us the freedom to tweak some of the APIs. So that's why it's not 4.2, it's 5.0, so that we can tweak and AKA break a few APIs that we wanna improve. So that's overall. Let's move on to the stats for the core. Stats for the core are we had 15 pull requests merged from 4 different authors, and we had 2 reviewers. That's more than normal, so that's good for us. So thanks to everybody for those PRs. We had 9 open pull requests as of yesterday, so if you want to see what those are, check out the notes for the meeting. We had 2 closed issues by 1 person and 1 open by another person, so we are net down by 1 for a total of 182 open issues. Hoping to close a few more this week, so we should get down even more. We had 6 active milestones, 1 of which should be closed, but I guess it hasn't been merged to master. So there's 1 open issue for 4.1, but I think I fixed that with the dirty bitmap tracking. We have 38 open issues for 4x, and we have 2 open issues for 4xx, which are bug fixes. And we have 4 open issues for 5x. So we're going to have to rejigger our milestones a bit here as we move into 5.0. But that'll be all right. And we have 0 issues not assigned to milestones, so that's a good place to be. Download stats wise, we have a stable release, which is 4.02, and it's had 3,223 downloads, and we've had 46 downloads on the release candidate 1, which is our unstable release, which just got released on Friday. So that's like 2 days worth of downloads on unstable. Not super surprising. So if you haven't tried it, please do update your stuff to the 4.1 RC1. It should be stable, but just better in every way, or better in a lot of ways than 4.02. So give that a shot, and let us know if you do find anything that is a game or showstopper, so that we can put the brakes on making that stable and getting more people downloading it. Let's move on to libraries. Since Katney's out, I will roll right into that as well. On the library side, we had 16 pull requests merged as well from 9 different authors, which is epic. And we had 6 reviewers. And again, as it goes to show, if you want to get started, reviewing is a great way to get started. We had 33 open pull requests across all of the different libraries, which it's pretty standard. There's a lot of libraries, so 33 is not too big. And they're listed in the notes doc as well, but I will not read those off. Issues wise, 5 closed issues by 4 people, 3 open by 3 people, for a total of 118 open issues currently. And there's a link to the circuitpython.org/libraries/contributing landing page, which will give you all that information. Library updates, in terms of the last 7 days, we had 1 new library, which is the mini MQTT library, which is bringing MQTT to airlift powered boards, and that's thanks to Brent. Updated libraries, we had the ESP32 SPI library updated, PyPortal updated, SimpleIO, Hue, Cursor Control, Adafruit IO, and TinyLoRa all updated in the last week. So thank you to everyone who updated those. And that's it for libraries. Let's go on to Hug Reports. So Hug Reports are done as a round robin, so let us know if you are lurking. or text only, and we will skip over you or whatever appropriately. Um, Hug reports are a chance for folks to say thank you to other folks for the work that they've been doing. It's a great way to both give people credit for where credit is due, and it's also good for us to see the things that we value as a community. So definitely like to do that. I will start, and then we'll circle back and go through the list. So let me take a time code. So I'm taking time codes. I didn't say it earlier, but if you don't want to watch the hour-ish long video of the whole meeting, I mean, y'all are here listening now, but you can read the notes and skip through to the interesting discussion. So that's why I'm taking them. Okay, so for me, Hug Reports, first and foremost, Hug Report to Dan for continued BLE progress and the pull request reviews for my stuff. Thanks to Dan for that. Thank you to Sedacious, Arturo, 182, Summersoft, and MS Costi for the continued good work on the ESP web serving. I really enjoyed following along on that issue where it was like, oh yeah, like Python has a standard API for how this stuff works, and we should just do that. That was really good investigation amongst all of you. So thank you for finding that and making things standard, which is cool. Thank you to Deshipu and Summersoft for helping folks in the Discord. I was getting caught up last night and saw that. So thanks to those folks. And then lastly, again, Nina Zakharenko, who's a friend of ours and works at Microsoft, was a guest on Talk Python with me, which is a pretty popular Python podcast. And she talks all about all her different projects and hardware and things like that. So thanks to Nina and Michael, the guy who does the podcast, for taking the time to do that. And with that, let's circle back to Brent.
Hello.
Hello.
I want to give a hug report to MS Cozy for their work on the ESP32 SPI server access point. It's really interesting work, and I can see a lot of people using it for different applications. Scott and Katney for the embedded FM experience or appearance, whatever. My favorite podcast on Friday.
Nice.
Dan for continued BLE work. I don't do much with BLE right now, but it's really interesting to see it as another protocol and see how it's moving. Terry from MCCI for questions I had about a specific radio module revision number, and lots of thanks to Adam for helping me dig into the MQTT protocol the past few weeks and his review notes on the library I wrote.
Awesome. Thank you, Brent. All right, Carter, are you lurking? Oh no, you're a chipmunk. All right. Do you want to type in, Carter, what you were? I'll read it off if you want to. Group hug from Carter. Okay. All right. And Dan for support on the forum. And good luck to Katney for PyOhio. Awesome. Okay, thanks, Carter. And Charles is lurking, so we'll go to Dan.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Scott, for reviewing the BLE PRs that I had. One was for the core CircuitPython, and one was for the Adafruit BLE library, which changed because the BLE I/O module API changed, and I added functionality. So that's great. They're all of a piece, and the PRs are accepted now. And thanks to Jerry for testing the BLE code in a variety of ways, and he actually didn't find anything that broke, which is fantastic and unusual. And thanks to Hero Effect, which is Lucien, for working on STM32F4. And there's a PR that he just submitted moments ago. We'll talk about that later for initial work on that. For a brand new chip family for CircuitPython, which is great.
Right.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Okay. I think Deshipu is... Oh, you have your mic working. Go ahead. Deshipu.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so I have a new shield for the D1 Mini boards that is compatible with the Pew Light feather wing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically exactly electrically the same as Pew Light, only fit in a much smaller form factor, and it's full of VS basically because of that. But
Mm-hmm.
what can I? Yeah, it was a hell to try to make.
Are you doing hug reports?
Oh my god! Yeah, sorry.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, to Scott for the work on the monochrome display IO. I haven't been able to try it yet, but I'm sure it will be great. And group hack.
Awesome.
To everyone.
Thank you, and we'll get to you shortly for status updates as well. All right, Hierophect, do you have hug reports?
Yeah, big thanks to Dan and to Scott for all their help the past 2 weeks on getting the STM32 port up and running. Group hug for everybody else in terms of building all the stuff up to that. And I guess thanks to Tact for his quick responses on some of the USP issues that we've been working through.
Awesome, thank you. All right, go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, hi. Congratulations to everybody for the 5.0 alpha. And Dan, thanks for the continued BLE updates and giving me something to try and break.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Jerry. All right, the next person is J Trip, who is text only, so I'll read it off. J Trip says, thanks to Maker Melissa for reviewing my first CircuitPython library PR, and thanks to Brent for work on the cursor control library. So welcome, J Trip. Thanks for making the meeting. And we'll go to Maker Melissa.
Hi, thanks. So I wanted to give a hug report to you and Kattni for your great Embedded FM podcast, and just a group hug to everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Maker Melissa.
Yeah.
All right. So MS Costi is text only, so I'll read that off. Says, hug report to Sedacious, Summersoft, Brent Rue for all the great feedback and suggestions on my PRs. Learned that the whiskey interface exists, which should work out well. And thanks to Arturo182 for taking time to test out the server PR before his vacation. So thank you, MS Costi. I'm a little sad that you changed your name from Robots Go Boop, but I understand that it matches your GitHub, so that makes sense. Noe is lurking, so we'll go to Summersoft.
Hello.
Hello.
So I got a hug for Carlos. I believe it's C4D7 on GitHub for implementing the missing board builds for Travis on the course. So that was nice to see that done, and I think they're kind of new to Python, so it was nice to watch them work through it. And then just group hug.
Awesome. Thank you, Summersoft. All right. And lastly, we have Tammy Makes Things, who is not in the meeting, but I'll read it off. Tammy says, hug report to the whole community because CircuitPython is awesome, but especially right now, all the folks working on the display IO library. And I see C. Grover just popped in and is typing, so we'll just see. C. Grover, if you have a mic, feel free to pop it on. Lurking. C. Grover says, lurking, loving RC1, which is awesome. All right. And with that, let's go on to status updates. So status updates are done in the same way where we do it as a round robin, but we instead we're talking about what we're working on and what we plan on, what we worked on in the last week and what we plan on working in the coming week. It's really handy for just keeping track of what everybody's doing and getting tips and tricks passed between each other. Let's see. There's lots of lurkers today that we're having to keep track of. All right, let me start us off. I think, yeah, so if you're lurking and you already let us know, that's cool. But if you just dropped in, let us know as well. Okay. So for me, last week was, well, first and foremost, the embedded.fm interview with Kattni and I is live. There's a link here, which, did it just get posted? I'll post it again, because I know Charles wanted a link to it. So there's that. I listened to most of it, and it was just turned out really well, and I was really liked that Kattni was on it with me, so thanks to her for that. I released a 4.0 RC1 with bitmap dirty tracking fix. So if you actually change a bitmap that is being displayed somehow on the display, it will actually cause the display to refresh when you change the bitmap, which is cool. And I also added it so that if you're only showing the bitmap in a tile grid, it will actually be smarter and only refresh the part of the bitmap that changed. It means that the demos that Dave Estelles did for Paint and Turtle are faster, and you don't have to have a sleep in there to make sure that it doesn't stipple it. So yeah, that's in. And I also tagged 5.0 Alpha 0, and kind of that means that master now is for 5x releases. There is a branch 4.1.x, 4.1.x, which is for the 4.1.0 releases. So just beware of that. Generally, we'll want to just have things on master. We'll have a pre-release out shortly for that branch. So don't be too scared about getting stuff right into master. It will get out soon, just once 4.1 is stable. I have a PR for the OLED support, which is also the like monochrome and multi color depth. It's waiting for a final review. I looked last night. And then this week, I kind of have two things that I'm shooting for. One is adding a hidden property to, I think, both tile grid and group. So you can just say like, oh, this thing in my stack up, like I just want to hide it for a little while. So I may actually take a crack at that today, since it's probably a smaller amount of work than this other item, which is going to be trying to get e-ink support. And I think the way I'll do that is I'll actually have a different display.io class to manage e-inks. So you won't do display.display, you'll do display.io.eink or something, and have different options there to initialize it with. Yeah, so that's one thing that will come with that is I may tweak the display.io APIs around waiting for a frame and refreshing soon. Just because e-inks you really should only refresh like every 3 minutes or so. So making sure that you don't refresh early and then have to wait 3 minutes will be important. So, and that will go into master, so it'll be in 5 as well. And that's what I'm working on. Let's circle back and talk with Brent.
Hello. The past week, I released and shipped Mini MQT. It's a non-network hardware-dependent QTT client implementation. So you can use it with Wi-Fi, or I'm going to work on Ethernet maybe later this week. And I'm excited about some of the projects which use HTTP, which is kind of slow, moving over to using MQTT. It's a really target build for speed and lightweight, and it's really fast.
Nice.
There's a new release of the Adafruit.io CircuitPython library with an MQTT class, which uses Mini MQTT as a dependency. So I retained it in one file, and then you can just choose whether you want an HTTP class or an MQTT class. That's a good like boilerplate if you're working with a different API like Azure or AWS IoT. I fixed an issue with Tiny LoRa that was occurring for the Arduino and CircuitPython library. Fixed an issue with cursor control on the PyGamer, and I started a learn guide for using Mini MQTT. And this week, I'm currently just typing, finishing a learn guide about MQTT for CircuitPython. It's going to target both Adafruit.io as a broker and then whatever broker you want. So a commercial broker or a broker that you're hosting on like a Raspberry Pi, for example. And it's a kind of difficult library to get a hold of, so I'm taking a little bit extra time to write this guide and make sure my explanations are good. I'm also going to be splitting requests out of ESP32 SPI. We're kind of doing a little bit of work on making some of these networking libraries hardware independent. So once we get new networking hardware, we're not tied to only using Wi-Fi for everything, because there are other ways to connect.
Right.
And that's going to be another library. Some prototypes to assemble, and then I'm going to start a pretty large sweep over the 6 or 7 Adafruit.io basics guides using the CircuitPython Adafruit.io library, which was discussed last summer, and now we're finally getting to it this summer, which is really exciting.
Good.
That's my news.
Awesome. Keep up the great work.
Thanks.
All right. Carter, do you want to try your mic?
Yes.
That sounds good.
Better? Yeah, just keep punching Discord till it finally works. Okay, yeah, so one thing I wanted to discuss is this Wii Noonchuck library I wrote.
Okay.
I did this totally, AT Makers, posted a request for it. I'm sure that Noonchuck can be a really useful thing for him to use as an input device for various projects. And I took a quick look at what was out there, and a lot of people had already done all the hard work to figure out the ones and zeros to pass. And it was just yet another I2C thing, essentially. So it was very simple to just throw together a CircuitPython library for them real quick. And this weekend, I was throwing it into the community bundle so it could just live a larger life and more people could contribute.
Right.
And belated hug to Lady Ada for jumping in and saying, go ahead and just make it in the Adafruit repo community bundle instead. It's like, sweet, if you're up for it, let's do it. So I got it all transferred over there. It's added in the bundle.
Okay.
Pretty obvious link where the library lives. So cool. It's out there. It's live. Play with it. And it's kind of seems to not be very robust. It kind of works for me, kind of semi works for Bill. Depends on what Noonchuck you use, etc. So since this is kind of a reverse engineered thing, it's kind of hard to piece together exactly what's going on. And I haven't really gotten super hands-on on it yet.
Right.
So, but now that it lives in an Adafruit repo and it's in the bundle, it's opened up for anyone to play with and contribute. So please help.
Awesome.
That's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks, Carter. All right. C. Grover is looking, but posted a couple pictures into the Discord chat. One is of a Featherwing, it looks like, that's generating different waves, like analog waveforms, which looks neat. It's the 809833 Featherwing, and there's a link to the GitHub in there as well. And then C. Grover goes back into lurk mode. So let's go to Dan.
Okay, so as mentioned, there were PRs for new BLE functionality. Those have been reviewed and they're now accepted. And there's a pre-release of the Adafruit BLE library. So it's not in the bundle, but if you go to the releases page for Adafruit BLE, it will be there. And I've just started working on BLE pairing and bonding, which is not incredibly complicated, but there's a lot of detail. And so I'll work toward that, and then we'll make a few services available that need pairing and bonding. One possibility is that there's a really simple time service so that you could get the time from your phone and read that time on your local, on a Feather 52840 or something like that. And also BLE HID, which is more work. So maybe I'll get the time service working first, assuming it's actually simpler, and then start working on HID. Okay.
Cool. Sounds cool, Dan. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Deshipu.
Okay, I already told you about the D1 mini shield, so I won't repeat that. I'm also still working on the new version of PiPi with the display, so waiting for PCBs on that. And during the workshops, we wrote a couple of additional games for PiPi. There is now Sokoban and Boulder Dash for it, so more games. And there is Light Cycles games, which is basically a snake for two, where you compete trying to make the opponent run into you. That's two-person game on a Pew Pew, where each person uses two buttons to control their snake, basically. So that's going to be available soonish as well.
Awesome.
And that's it.
Sweet. Thank you. All right, let's go to Hierophect.
Okay, so this week I've been wrapping up or just getting prepped up for the pull request for the STM32 integration for the F412 and F411. That first kind of the first edition of this is you have REPL access through UART. We ran into some snags with USB, but luckily we've had some quick responses on that, and we're looking to get support in pretty quickly. I think we'll be able to probably get that in within the next couple days, if not today. And then the initial kind of pared down edition of this we've got digital I/O working, and I've got prototypes coming up for I2C. Beyond that, I think I've been working on kind of conditionalizing modules kind of across the port system, just to make it easier for really minimal ports to exist. Just because I believe that this is if I'm not wrong, this is the first kind of from zero port that we've had. I'd like to at some point potentially make a very, very minimal framework for a port. Could be a potential starting point if somebody wanted to put in Cypress support or support for NXP boards or whatever else. They would have something that kind of guides them through the process of getting a project building, knowing which modules to include where, and maybe even have like a tutorial process for that. Since once everything is kind of conditionalized and you're aware of kind of what all the different parts do, getting a port is really pretty straightforward for those early steps. So hoping to get more work done this week on just those basic modules and USB, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Awesome. Sounds super cool. Yeah, I've been thinking about a similar port, so that would be a neat thing to think about after the STM's a bit further.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. All right. Hakuza Tuna is lurking. I can never say that. Jason P's lurking as well. I will read off Jeff Epler's update. He's not here, but he's alphabetically next. Jeff says for NRF PWM audio, majority of functionality is in pull request 2000. Working on pause and resume, working on any reviewed items that are noted on the pull request, and attending Pi Ohio, which I believe is next weekend. Yeah, I can just say Phil, but that's okay. Okay, let's go to Jerry.
Hi. So I spent some time last week playing. Got a Raspberry Pi 4 and I put Buster on it. And first time I tried to use it with the RFM9X libraries, and it didn't work. And turns out there was a known issue with the RPI GPIO library that didn't support pull-ups properly. So that has now been resolved. And, and just tested it, and all works great now. So nice to see that. So I think the Raspberry Pi 4 is back online, and so that means now I can start migrating all my Pis to Buster. Fun. And did some BLE testing, not too, but enough to play with it a little bit, especially with the new 5.0 release and then the new BLE release that fixed some issues with that. So it all seems to be working quite well. Nice work, Dan. And then I spent a bunch of time looking into an issue where a poster on Discord had asked, was trying to take a PyGamer and put an ESP32. He was trying to use a Huzzah 32 Feather, And I thought, well, yeah, it should work fine. So I plugged an airlift in, and it worked great. No problems at all. But the Huzzah 32, well, he was first trying to plug the Huzzah 32 in. You can't do that. But you should be able to wire it up. And I ran into some issues that that I brought up as an in the weeds discussion.
Okay.
That there seems to be something funky going on with back powering things, from, at least from the Pi Gamer, with anything but the airlift. So we can talk about that later. But it was interesting and somewhat educational.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about that.
Okay.
Okay, J-Trip is lurking, so we'll go to Maker Melissa.
Hello.
Hello.
So last week I updated 8 Arduino display guides to reflect drawing out bitmaps with image reader library. I did a bunch of Raspberry Pi form support with some display issues. I added an example to the new 320 by 240 ST7789 base display. I helped Kattni with some info for her keynote. Added the Raspberry Pi compute modules, and I started adding boards to the CircuitPython.org website. This week, I'm going to be working on getting the PiBadger fix for the PiBadge LC because it doesn't have the accelerometer. I want to add the T7735 Arduino library. Display examples to support the new 320 by 240 display, and also add a PiBadge and Pi. And then I want to add, there's a missing setup .py file for the display text library I want to fix because it's choking on releases. I want to add all the new compute module boards to the CircuitPython.org website and finish adding the guide for adding the boards to that. And that's it.
That sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it does sound like a lot now that
Well, keep up the good work, Melissa.
Thanks.
All right. MS Costi and Noe are looking, so we'll go to Summersoft.
Hello again.
Hello.
So for last week, I'd noticed for Adabot the PiPi download stats that get run every day. I'd noticed it on Thursday, and then Mike B shot me a message on Friday, I believe it was, asking me to look into it. But basically, the PiPi stats were failing. The report was failing. So I looked into that. It was a pretty easy troubleshooting session because it all comes from PiPiStats.org, and the website itself was timing out and giving 502 gateway error. So that was the problem. It came back up on Sunday. So I ran I ran the script locally, and the report worked fine. And then yesterday's cron job on Travis ran fine as well. Going forward, I just kind of put this in here. I mean, it's worked pretty much for the most part. So we can just keep using PiPi stats. And accept any downtimes like that just occurred. I think there's a couple other different API services that maybe have better uptime. I don't know. But then there's the hard version, which is where we could end up doing our own stats retrieval using the Google BigQuery stuff, if that was wanted. But I just kind of put those options in there. Just
have you chatted with the PiPi stats people at all?
I haven't, and I don't. The website itself is like, it looks like something I would make because I'm not a web dev person. So
yeah,
it's really simple, and I don't even think there's a contact on there.
Okay,
but I mean, we could look into it.
Yeah, that's probably where I'd start because maybe we could throw them money instead.
Yeah. So that was it for that, and then for Rosie Pi, I finally got my set of Ansible playbooks to run without failure, which allows the Pi that I'm using or anybody who wants to try and run it as well to both be initially set up manage a couple services for the web face, the interface with GitHub Checks API, and then to automatically to remain up to date with the configuration as it is with the repos and whatnot using a cron tab. But it still needs I won't call it a slight fix. It's a pretty big fix. And then I also worked with Carlos on that missing board builds check in Travis.
Right. And is that merged in?
It is not. I actually left it open. I approved the changes as they are now. I left it open for you.
Okay.
There's an open question in there if you want to take a look at it.
Yeah, I'll try to take a look today.
It was basically, so there are, do we want to ignore any boards in it? You know, so
right.
I gave an example of the Trinket Hackspress. Because I don't know that many people are making those, but
right.
At any rate.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take a look.
So for this week, the only thing I really have on the list is more Rosy Pi. So I have to rework the installation of GCC ARM embedded. I don't know why I thought it was going to work. I don't think I even thought about it. I just pointed it to download the 64-bit tarball, which Raspbian definitely didn't like. So now the only real option that I can see going forward is to compile it from source, which that should be fun. And then I start, actually, now that I have everything on the Raspberry Pi, I'm going to start verifying and getting the test framework running and communicating with a board connected to it. So
cool.
That's what I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Summersoft. And lastly, I've got Tammy Makes Things status update to read off, so I will take a time code and do that. Tammy says, last week was 3D printing a whole bunch of flexi dragons for people, which is this Thingiverse URL. Copy link. And then design of my parking space distance sensor project and connecting a stemma connector to my MaxBotix ultrasonic sensor so I can use my PyGamer as my test platform. This week, figuring out display I/O enough to be able to get my first test of the parking sensor done this week. That's what Tammy's up to. All right, and with that, that's status updates. Let's move on to the final section of the meeting, which is In the Weeds. In the Weeds is a chance for us to talk about any sort of random stuff that may take a bit longer to discuss. If you have topics for it, feel free to drop those in the notes like some folks already have. Or you can also drop them in the text chat and we'll pick those up and throw those in the notes doc for you. But putting just kind of a text thing in there is the easiest way for us to keep track of that. So please do one of those two things if you have topics to cover. And with that, we'll start with Jerry for the first one.
Yeah, so as I started to describe, the bottom line is I took a PyGamer and put an airlift feather wing on it, and it works great. No problems at all. So then I took an ESP32 Huzzah feather and just wired up the 8 necessary pins. This SPI pins, reset, all the standard pins, and hooked it up. And whenever I make the connection, I always have the PyGamer switch turned off. So I plug in the USB port and immediately start hearing this sort of squealing coming out of the speaker. That's kind of weird. So I sort of ignored that and turned it on, and it works great. No problems at all. Except that when you turn it off, again, when you turn off the switch, the NeoPixels start doing some pretty funky things. And so, that's kind of weird. So, and then again, another user was having similar issues. So I started digging into the schematics and looking and trying to understand things. And clearly, on passing VUSB over to the ESP32 to power it, and that is obviously going to turn on the ESP32 board completely because there's nothing to not turn it on. And so I thought, well, that makes, maybe there's just something's feeding power back somewhere, and it's not a good situation. So I tried looking at the differences with the airlift, and clearly the airlift has, there are some real differences in the way it's connected. But one thing I measured the voltage and saw that when you have the switch off, the airlift doesn't power up. So it looks like, even though it's not completely clear to me how that the enable is still getting pulled down on the airlift feather wing when you connect it, and so it doesn't power on unless you close the switch.
Right.
So that's the way it works great. So it's just with the various breakout boards that problems occur. So clearly, and so the worst one was this case with the Huzzah feather. Then I tried an airlift breakout board.
Mm-hmm.
And my first test was, it seemed it like worked fine, no issues. Then I looked a little closer and realized, but no, actually, if I listened really closely, when I turned off the switch at the end, if I shut it down and turned off the switch, I'd hear some noise coming out of the speaker. Not before, but only after. So I don't know what that's about. And with an ESP32 breakout board, it again seemed to be okay when you first turn everything on, or first just hook everything up and plug in the USB to the PiGamer, but leave the switch off. I didn't hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
But when I turned everything off, then the NeoPixel stayed on. And so again, just something's odd.
Right.
So I don't know where to go. I'm trying to figure out where to go with it, whether to even worry about it. One thing I did test is back on the Feather Huzzah 32. If instead of feeding VUSB over, I feed 3.3 volts over to the 3.3 volts on the Feather, everything works great. So, so I don't know where the feedback's occurring. But one
place I've seen it happen is like most of the microcontroller pins have protection diodes on them, and you can, if you have like your MISO line, right? So master in, slave out. Like if that's being held high, but it's being held high to the original chip that's off, like because that line will be higher than the source voltage, you can actually get going through the protection diode to like the 3.3 rail.
Okay.
Out of the SAMD21. I've seen things like that happen.
Okay. So that it's just a heads up to people, a warning. I don't know. One of my questions was is this an issue? Should I post it somewhere? And if so, where? And, it's like I said, the Featherwing seems to, everything plays really nicely.
I would suggest the support forum, and then like either Lamore or somebody else can take a look at it and just be like, okay, oh yeah, don't do that, or like, oh yeah, we should add a diode here or something.
Okay, I'll try and write it up and put it in there. And I assume there's really no problem using 3 volts, passing it from that regulator to the other device. Although maybe if there is an issue, well, maybe that's still not a good situation.
It's just a matter of like how many amps the regulator can source, I think. And like when you probably peak pretty high with the Wi-Fi transmissions too.
Where he's going. Yeah, I wasn't doing a lot with it. I was just sort of trying to run simple tests and trying it out.
Okay.
So, okay. Didn't know if that was something anybody else was trying. If people want to put their PiGamers online,
right?
It's a tempting thing to do. So.
Yeah, C. Grover, do you have ideas about that? I assume that's why you unlurked. Mic may not be working.
But the other place that I was looking as to whether, because of the at first I thought everything was working okay except for the Huzzah, the Feather ESP32, and I thought maybe that the CP2104 USB bridge has a connection to the reset line. I didn't know if that was messing things up, but then when I realized, there's still some issues with any of the breakout boards. So I think the issue is having that power. Maybe so maybe looking at the other lines is better.
Right.
So all right, I'll post it to the forums. Thanks.
Yeah, and then we can have one more look at it too. So.
Okay.
Audio amp and Neos are powered by USB. Oh, they're not on the 3.3 volt line. Can you leak? You could probably leak 3.3 back.
Yeah, there is one funny little signal that's on the PiGamer that I've never seen on another thing. On D13, there's this pin that comes up. The ID pin off the USB goes into D13, which is actually used by the airlift and by all these connections. I didn't think it was. I tried moving it to another, and it didn't seem to make any difference. But I don't know if that's significant.
Yeah, I would do the support forum because then Lamore can get back to you about she knows all those real hardware things better than I do.
All right, thanks.
All right, okay, let's go to Deshipu.
Yeah, okay. We were just before the meeting discussing some memory issues, and I noticed that somebody has similar problems with audio I/O that I have, where we're repeatedly playing different sounds from the WAV file. Every time you create a WAV file, it allocates those two buffers of 512 bytes, which is quite big. And if you have any code running in between, you are likely to have some memory fragmentation, and your program will eventually crash with memory error when you try to play a sound. So I'm thinking, one solution to that is to everywhere where we are allocating a buffer, to allow passing a pre-allocated buffer from created by the user at the beginning of the program. So this way we can, first of all, we avoid this memory error thing. Well, it may still error due to fragmentation later on if some other code is allocating things, but at least it's not the completely unrelated thing that is crashing. And second thing is that then you can reuse the same buffer for several different things. So for instance, we do the same thing in the bitmap when we are creating a bitmap, or probably in several other places. So I'd like to propose maybe a pattern that we could agree to use to have a standard keyword argument for passing a buffer, and of course raise an exception if the buffer is not large enough for the particular use case we need it for, but it should be possible to use a bigger one. Then this way we can reuse the same buffer for different things.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah, okay. So I can't promise to write up here pull request for that this week, but I will try to look into that. And at least for audio I/O. Sorry?
One question I had is that in some cases, in the constructor, I pass in a size of a buffer to allocate, and then the buffer is allocated for the life of the object. But is that not long enough? Like maybe I'm thinking I'm not familiar with the audio I/O on the top of my head, but for instance, in the BLE stuff, I pass in a buffer size, like there's a FIFO, like there's a thing called characteristic buffer, which is a FIFO for BLE characteristics. And so I don't actually pass a buffer in, but just a size, and then that's static. Sort of. Is that good enough, or are there cases in audio I/O where you're creating new?
I think it's like imagine you have a bunch of WAV files for a bunch of different sound effects, and like each one of those WAV files allocates a K or something.
Okay. So what class is being used to play them?
That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It matters that you're doing the audio IO.wave file. It's a buffer coming in from the file system.
I see. Okay. All right.
But yeah, the issue is that like if you're creating those objects just so that you can play a sound, and then once you play the sound, they're done.
Right. That's a bad. Right.
Then you're just churning your memory.
Yeah.
So I think for characteristics like you're getting at, I don't necessarily think we need it, but I think for this case where it's like, I just want to like create the object just long enough so I can play it back and then be done. Like
Yeah, for things that you create at the beginning of your program and you keep them as globals or whatever,
right?
They are kept through the life of your program. That is less of a problem. Though I think it still would be useful to have that, because then you can reuse the same buffer.
Yeah, so I'm understanding this is basically a static area that's available to everything. It's not dynamically built. It's there and it's protected for whatever buffer you want to use. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
that's one use pattern. Of course, you could have several different buffers if you need to use several different things at the same time.
Right.
And, you don't have to have one single area. But this parameter, this option of creating your own buffer, gives you a lot of flexibility.
Right. Yeah, and one thing I was thinking about too is like maybe we should add a way to tell CircuitPython like from here to here don't allocate anything, and then like you can know that like a particular piece of code is not doing any allocations.
That's getting complex very fast. Because then you need exceptions to that.
Yes, yeah.
And basically we already have that. We already can just allocate a buffer at the beginning, and that works.
Well, I'm just talking about like if you want to know exactly like whether a piece of code allocates or not. How would you assert that this chunk doesn't?
Well, I don't think Python is designed to give you information.
Well, right. Yeah, it's not something CPython will do. But that doesn't like CPython does have these APIs that allow you to provide buffers to them rather than it creating buffers on your behalf, and so like or like allocating on your behalf. So like it would be interesting that you could, this is of course for advanced, but
I think CPython is mostly written with the assumption that you have infinite memory.
Well, that's not entirely true, given that like struct has read into. Like there are read into variations at the lowest level of things.
Okay, yeah, that's a bit old thing.
Yeah, and I think that may actually be for more performance reasons than running out of memory. It's just like hitting a GC or like hitting a bad case on the allocation could be slow.
Yeah, that's definitely true. If you use less memory, your program is also likely to be faster.
Right. But yeah, so I think it could be interesting to be able to actually just say like this piece in this low level library we've written so that it doesn't actually allocate anything. And just having a way of just telling CircuitPython like, let me know if I do.
So are you thinking of something like a with statement that disables memory allocation?
Yeah, it could be it could be a context manager, or it could just be two function calls.
Just raises a memory error every time something tries to allocate.
Exactly. Yeah. So the only thing you'd be able to allocate during that period is the exception itself.
Yeah, but but that doesn't solve the problem with audio I/O for me, at least.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, but
allocate.
It would help you find the fact that it was allocating, potentially.
Well, I know it is allocating.
Yeah.
I know that from the fact that it raises a memory error, actually.
Right. Yeah, and I think constructors are weird too, but yeah.
Yeah, so I will try to propose at least a work in progress PR.
Okay.
For maybe for audio I/O at the beginning, and then we can discuss further.
Yeah, and we can discuss that API and then apply it elsewhere where we need it, for sure. Okay, and with that, let's wrap it up. Thank you to everybody who's made the meeting this week. This is the CircuitPython Weekly. It happens Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If there's a U.S. holiday on the Monday, we will usually either cancel or move it to a different day. Those notifications go out to the CircuitPythonistas role on the Adafruit Discord. So if you're in this meeting, you want to get pinged about updates for the meeting, have us add you to the CircuitPython CircuitPythonistas role, so you get those notifications. Everybody's welcome to join the meeting, so just let us know, or just drop in when you are. This meeting has been recorded and will go up on the Adafruit YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Adafruit. Goes on Diode Zone occasionally when I do it, and then it's also in the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter that you can sign up for at adafruitdaily.com. I think that's the gist of it. So I think next week is a normal week. So thank you to everybody who made it, and we'll talk with you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.